Please welcome USDA's Agricultural Marketing Service Administrator, Eleanor Starmer.
Talk today about what USDA has to do with urban agriculture. And I would not fault you if your response to that was, do you have anything to do with urban agriculture? We haven't exactly been known for this work for a very long time, but I'm very pleased to say that the answer today is yes. I want to talk a little bit about some of the great resources that we have to share, but I also want to take a little bit of time first this morning to tell the story of how we got here, because I think it's instructive as we look ahead to the next Farm Bill and to stronger relationships between USDA and the urban agriculture community. I don't have to tell you that the face of agriculture is changing. We have new people growing new things in new places, using technologies that we've never seen before. You'll meet a lot of those people and hear a lot about what they're doing later on today. Now, USDA is a longstanding and massive institution. We have almost 100,000 employees, 17 different agencies, offices across the country. It's not easy to figure out how to engage with us or exactly who to engage with. And I have to say, as I mentioned, most people, when they think USDA, they don't think urban agriculture. So your inclination would not necessarily be to come to our doors and say, what can you do for me? But over the course of the last 7 years, that's begun to change. And I think it's changed because of a confluence of factors. The 2008 Farm Bill and then the 2014 Farm Bill gave USDA a number of new programs and new authorities that were focused broadly on local and regional food systems development and which had space for urban agriculture work. We are also very lucky in this administration to have an incredibly dedicated group of people at the department who care deeply about working to ensure that USDA can meet the needs of this changing face of agriculture. We were very lucky to have Kathleen Merrigan as our Deputy Secretary. Her leadership, I think, really pushed the institution to take this work seriously, and it gave the folks who had been at USDA for a long time doing this work a real platform to take that work to the next level. We also had members of the public coming in and asking us what we could do to help them. It started, I think, with city governments that had worked with the department on nutrition programs, SNAP, school lunch, so they knew us, they had been in there before, but all of a sudden they were coming in and they were asking a lot of questions that we didn't have ready answers for. Things like, did we have any programs that could help develop an urban farming training program? Could we finance aggregation hubs for garden networks? Were there conservation programs or loans that could assist someone who had 1/8 of an acre or who was growing stuff on a roof? Did we have loans for indoor growing facilities? What did that look like? And did we have research that could support the folks who were doing this kind of new innovative work? We didn't know when folks first came in and started asking those questions. But I think we had the right group of people and we had enough new programs to work with through the Farm Bill that we could think creatively about what the answers might be. Now, this was all taking place as the department was thinking more broadly about support for local and regional food systems. Urban agriculture is certainly one area of focus underneath that. It does absolutely have its unique needs, and I think we'll hear a lot about that today. But as USDA was first starting to think about that work, there was a lot of parallel between some of the issues that we were seeing in urban spaces and some of the things we were hearing about in peri-urban and rural areas with farmers who were trying to sell into those nearby markets. How do we work as an institution with small-scale diversified growers? What do these types of farmers need in terms of production assistance, business planning, credit, infrastructure? What markets are they selling into? What does that supply chain look like? And how do we understand all the co-benefits of urban agriculture, social, economic, environmental, health-related, that might be associated with a local food system? It was in the context of this confluence of factors that we launched the Know Your Farmer, Know Your Food initiative in 2009 to coordinate the department's work on local and regional food systems. And urban agriculture has always been a part of that work. The initiative's task was really to look across this massive institution and take stock of the programs and the resources that we already had, figure out how to communicate that to this new audience that hadn't necessarily worked with us before. And then, through conversations with that audience about what was working and what wasn't working and what the needs were, think creatively about how we could reform or adapt our programs so that they worked better. We then spun off an urban agriculture working group to give us space to do the same sort of assessment and process, really specifically focused on urban areas. And I want to share a couple things that we learned in the course of this work. We learned that we have a lot of tools. I like to say USDA is by far the largest grant maker on local and regional food systems work in the country. We've done over $1 billion of local food support since 2009, and a lot of folks don't know that, so there are tools there. We learned that there are very unique challenges with urban agriculture that sometimes make it difficult to adapt those tools to the new setting. We learned that, as I said, we've got these tools, but USDA is not the only game in town. There are also a lot of other federal partners that are doing really interesting work in this space. There's a lot that we still don't know, a lot of questions that we need your help with. But we've made a lot of progress, and I think things are looking good in the future, particularly as we strengthen those lines of communication with all of you. I'm going to talk a little bit then about putting some detail on the bones of those lessons learned. This is a piece that we put together just to illustrate the breadth of USDA programs across a local food supply chain. This isn't specific to urban, but certainly it can be applied to urban. And I know there's a lot of words on the slide, so you don't need to even try to read them. But the point is just that these are lists of grant and loan programs that we have at each point along a local food supply chain that are relevant and that people are using for this work. And I think that that's very, very exciting. We also learned that there are unique challenges associated with urban agriculture. The business model is going to be very different. I think with your help, we've recognized that there are many benefits that agriculture brings to an urban area beyond profit, and you're going to hear a lot about those today, but certainly a business plan and a strong business plan is key to the sustainability of an urban farm business, and that is going to be sometimes very challenging. There's also the much more capital-intensive indoor growing facilities, and I think their financing can be a challenge because it's such a new model, and a lot of the traditional folks that you might go to for capital just aren't familiar with it. There are going to be different barriers associated with land access. Soil quality, water access, those look very different in an urban setting than what we're used to working with, even in a peri-urban area. Access to the traditional infrastructure that a farmer depends upon, everything from production infrastructure on the farm, like a hoop house, to processing infrastructure, cold storage, distribution networks, that's all going to look very different. And the normal players in ag infrastructure do not operate in cities. So you're really starting to have to sort of redevelop a lot of these systems. And identifying and cultivating the markets is going to be, again, very unique. Urban farmers, I think, have some real advantages, like proximity to buyers, but there are also a lot of challenges. For example, I think one thing we'll hear about today, how do you make food accessible in cities to low-income populations that need it while still meeting your bottom line? That's a huge challenge. We have tools to meet these needs, and USDA is not the only game in town. I want to illustrate that first with a quick look at a tool that we developed called the Compass Map. And this is a way that once we did that, taking stock of all of USDA's programs and resources that can support local foods, we said, let's see where we're actually doing this work. And so we looked across probably 30 different grant and loan programs, and we actually mapped those investments. This map is online. On our Know Your Farmer, Know Your Food site, and I just typed urban into the search box, and I came up with 199 examples of urban agriculture projects that have been supported by USDA since 2009. So that's just one exciting visual of the fact that we have a lot going on in this space. We also, as the Urban Ag Working Group, developed an urban agriculture toolkit. I'm going to have some brochures for the toolkit out on the front table that you're welcome to take, and I know there will be another USDA colleague of mine, Ann Bartuska, who will talk a little bit more about some of the research-focused aspects of that work later on today. But I want to run through the toolkit quickly, just to highlight a couple examples, again, of ways that we are working in this space and ways that some of our federal partners are. The toolkit itself was designed to fill a gap where we saw a lot of cities developing their own urban ag toolkits and focusing on some of those more local level policy challenges, but not a lot of recognition of how the federal programs plugged in. So our attempt was to kind of map that out and also identify some of the best local and regional urban ag tools that partners were developing. So let's walk through some of the highlights of the toolkit really quick to give you a few examples. Business and community planning is one area that we focus on. We're looking at things like, for example, community food projects grants. These are grants that fund networks of organizations and other partners, many of them in cities, to address issues of community food security, and there's a lot of urban agriculture work going on there. Beginning farmer and rancher development grants. These fund organizations and other entities that run training programs for beginning farmers. I was just looking yesterday at one that we gave to an entity in the city of New York to develop a curriculum for an urban farmer training program. So that's just one example of that area as well. HUD. Not necessarily, you associate them with urban, as they like to say urban is their middle name, but you wouldn't necessarily think of them as agriculture. Michigan State did a really interesting survey a couple years ago where they went out to municipalities around the country and they asked them, of all the federal resources out there, what do you use as a city to support local food work? And the largest single answer that they received back from these cities was HUD Community Development Block Grants. This is money that is given to the states or to the municipalities that they in turn re-grant to organizations to help them tackle any number of challenges that are facing communities. But we see a lot of folks using that resource as a way to support urban agriculture to address a myriad of issues. Land and capital access is another area we cover in the toolkit. USDA's Farm Service Agency is the place where farmers go for loans, not an entity that a lot of urban farmers are familiar with. One of the challenges is we don't have a footprint in urban areas, and I'm going to talk about that in just a minute. But what we have done over the last few years is launch a new microloan program that's really specifically targeted to smaller scale growers who don't need a $300,000 loan. They need a $50,000 loan or a $20,000 loan. And by launching this microloan program, we've really been able to open the doors of FSA to a whole new cohort of farmers. I am very excited to announce that today, actually, on USA Jobs, we have just posted the first position for an urban agriculture outreach coordinator for FSA, who's going to be based in New York City, co-located with the State Department of Ag office there. And I think this is an amazing pilot, trying to figure out how we can more effectively make those connections with urban growers. So that is very, very exciting. Soil and water quality is another area that we focus on in the toolkit. USDA has a natural resources conservation service that does conservation technical assistance with anyone who's interested. You can be a school, you can be a church, you can be a community garden, and NRCS technical experts can come in and help you figure out how to better manage natural resources on your land. But they also have financial resources that are specifically designed for farmers. We have seen increasingly urban farmers using these resources. And one big one is high tunnels or hoop houses. I was just reading about an effort in the city of Cleveland to develop high tunnels on urban land to extend the growing season. And there are over 100 high tunnels financed by NRCS in the city of Cleveland. So that is really, really exciting. I also want to give a special mention to EPA's Brownfields program. We have developed a really close and strong working relationship with EPA. I, prior to this job, really wasn't familiar with what Brownfields does, but it's such a great way for cities to actually use federal resources to look at areas that have contamination, figure out how to clean them up, do the assessment, do the cleanup, train organizations and others to assess and clean up those contaminated sites. And then they've really taken it to the next level to show folks who want to do urban agriculture how to do that in a place where you are dealing with a lot of soil contamination sometimes. So they have some great resources on their website specifically targeted to urban growers that I would recommend you check out. And those are also mentioned in the toolkit. Infrastructure and production strategies. There is some really neat work going on in our SARE program, which is Sustainable Ag Research and Education. Urban Ag has actually been a cornerstone of this program for a very long time, and it's a really neat program because it really focuses on farmer-to-farmer education and opportunities to share knowledge that's learned by the experience of one urban farmer with many other urban farmers. So that's one that I just particularly want to highlight. We also have a great kind of compendium of urban ag resources in our National Ag Library in the Alternative Farming Information Center. And as we've talked with growers who are interested in not just selling to the farmer's market, but getting access to those larger volume markets that require you to have cold storage where you can keep the produce for a little while you take it to the grocery store, we've been able to adapt a program that FSA has had for a long time, the Farm Storage Facility Loan. Traditionally, it's been used for things like grain bins. They announced a few years ago that now you can use it for cold storage, and you can use it to store a wide variety of kind of specialty and niche market crops. And so we're seeing urban growers take that up as well as a way to finance some of that infrastructure. Finally, I want to focus on the market development area of work. And this is really where my agency, the Ag Marketing Service, hangs its hat. We have some great work. AMS has really been kind of the place for local food work and increasingly the seat of the urban ag work at USDA. We've got a lot of wonderful research and other activities. We also have some loan programs that folks are really using in exciting ways to support urban agriculture. On Wednesday, our secretary, Tom Vilsack, announced a new round of grants of almost $30 million for two different programs, the Farmers Market Promotion Program and the Local Food Promotion Program. Local food promotion is basically everything that's local, but that's not direct to consumer. So if you're doing farm to school, farm to institution, farm to grocery store, and all the things that go along with those supply chains, that's the grant that's for you. But in both of these grants, we've seen over 50% of the grant recipients are working with urban farmers or urban-based food systems, which is really, really exciting. So I encourage you to go on the AMS website and check out some of those examples of projects as well. We expect that grant will open again for proposals in the next few months, so something for folks to keep an eye on. So there's a lot going on at USDA and a lot of tools that we have, but there's also a lot that we don't know. And what's been really exciting in recent weeks, months, year or two, has been that our research agencies are really taking up the mantle of, how do we wrap our heads around this? Who is farming in urban areas? Our ag census doesn't account for urban farmers. And so we really need to be thinking about how we capture who's doing this, what their models are, what their challenges are, and really dig in at the research level on figuring out what works. Ann Barteska, my colleague who will speak later this afternoon, is going to focus on some of that research. I also want to reiterate that within my agency, we have some really exciting research going on, including a grant that we provided to Cornell University's Small Farm Program. They're doing a national study of commercial farming in urban areas that we plan to have released this coming spring. And the study is going to include case studies from 14 commercial farms around the country. It'll identify community, policy, and infrastructure needs related to urban agriculture, and it's going to provide recommendations for key investments to further develop commercial urban ag. So that's a space I think you'll hear a lot about today in terms of how people are actually making money on this, what those sustainable business models look like, and I hope that this study will help shed some light on that as well. We also have technical assistants and research staff working closely with communities around the country, including right here in DC's Ward 7, in partnership with Dreaming Out Loud, and I know you'll hear from them later today as well, and other partners. And those folks are really digging into the community elements that go along with a successful urban ag project, and who needs to be at the table in order to make these things stick. They're also then looking at, once you've got the community together and you have the project underway, what are those marketing opportunities going to look like and how might we assist them? So I think we're asking the right questions and you are helping us understand what those questions should be, but there's a lot more that we need to know to really understand how we can help. I want to just close with a few lessons that I take from all of this work. The first is that the Farm Bill really matters. Had we not had the new programs and the authorities that we got in 2008 and 2014 to do this work, we would have been working with a much less robust toolbox. So I think the fact that this forum is focusing on how urban agriculture can better engage with the Farm Bill is really, really exciting, because it's a huge piece of legislation, just like USDA is a huge institution, but there are a lot of opportunities. The other lesson I take is that there's also a lot that we can do just with our existing authorities. We don't have to go back to Congress all the time for new things, but we don't know how to use those authorities well unless we are in dialogue together. So I think through building relationships with folks at USDA, through your willingness to engage with us, that's how we figure out how to think creatively about what we can do with the tools we already have. And I think with an administration transition coming up, that's all the more important. I don't see urban ag going away. I think it's on the map, but it's important to continue to develop those relationships and learn about the tools and resources that we have. I just finally want to end with my kind of soapbox agenda item, which is we, like all of agriculture at USDA, have an aging population. We're going to be losing a lot of employees to retirement in the coming 5 years. My agency alone is going to lose about 1/3 of our employees to retirement. And as I see the opportunities to make our public policies reflect the diversity of our agricultural system, having folks with diverse backgrounds, having worked in urban places and an interest in these issues is absolutely fundamental to shaping those programs and policies within the department. So as someone who did not grow up thinking I would end up in government, and now here finding incredible opportunities to work with fabulous people, I just want to encourage everyone to keep that in mind, because there are so many opportunities and so much that you can do when you come to the table in that way as well. So with that, I hope you have a wonderful and productive day. Think big ideas, learn a lot, leave here, do your good work, and then please come talk to us. Thank you. And I think we have maybe just a couple minutes for questions. And I've been told there's some very high-tech way in which I'm going to get these questions. Let's see.
The idea is that you're submitting your questions through Pigeonhole.
Sure. Which panel?
They're going to come up on the screen here. I'm getting the head bob, yes. Oh,
okay.
there. And you know, there's also a way that you can upvote them. If you're not submitting a question, but you see a question that you think is really important, you can upvote it. So, Eleanor, when you just look at these, and thanks for being our maiden voyage here.
No problem.
That the top vote right over there.
Yep.
Maybe you can take that question since
Okay.
that's
Sure,
on most people's minds.
First, I'm going to take a really quick and easy one, which is the bottom row. Can I use farm storage facility loans to buy a refrigerated truck? As of earlier this year, yes, you can. That was another change that we just made to the program. So, is the USDA working and supporting composting work on a small scale and diverse level? Is it focused on large scale composting? So that's a really interesting question, not one that is totally in my wheelhouse, so I will admit a bit of naivete, but I do know that our Natural Resources Conservation Service does a lot of work on compost. We do a lot of research on composting as well through our Ag Research Service. And in fact, ARS has a really neat partnership with UDC, where they're looking at compost and handling waste in the urban environment on UDC's urban farm. So perhaps Sabine can talk a little bit more about that. But NRCS does have financial assistance for things like composting pads, and their technical experts are also able to help advise on how you manage compost effectively on a farm. So that's something where, again, you know, it's a kind of a developing process of learning for us too. Because sometimes those technical assistants or experts haven't worked in urban spaces, but we're seeing a lot more of that learning taking place. And maybe I'll take one more. Do I have time for one more? Okay. How will organics be made accessible to urban farmers? So my agency runs the National Organic Program. This is an area where I have a lot of passion. I grew up in a small rural community in New Hampshire with a lot of organic farmers. And we have launched recently something that we call our Sound and Sensible initiative, which is a way we actually support partner organizations to go out and do a lot of training and education for farmers who might be considering organic certification. So we talk about what does it actually take, what are the types of records that you need to have, what are some changes that you're going to need to make to your production system in order to get certified, how does that process work, and just kind of give people a clearer picture of what it takes. That process has also helped us streamline the certification process and just make it clearer and easier. And I think as that has happened, we've seen a lot more small growers who didn't necessarily have the bandwidth to be able to go through the whole certification process, be able to access organic certification. I think it's a really exciting new area, and as we see more, particularly in urban spaces where you really need to make money, you really need to be selling some high value crops. And hopefully you've also got a diversified business plan that allows you to have a lower price point for your own community. But what I've seen anecdotally as I go around and talk with urban growers is that that high value market is also a very important part of a diverse business plan. That organic certification really allows you to access a high value market. So we see it as a huge opportunity, and I think there's a lot we can do and more we will continue to do in the future. So with that, thank you so much for having me. Have a wonderful rest of the day. Thank you.